So I'm out getting in some really great miles on a beautiful day here in Nebraska. And I've been thinking a lot about the word retirement. And I think if we're going to retire something, I think we should retire the idea that when we stop working and start entering a different phase of our life, that all of a sudden we are going to go downhill. I just don't understand where that comes from. I think also we think in retirement, we're going to become, over time, weak, frail, and nothing that we can do about that, that it's just a downhill slide. I think that idea really needs to be retired. Also, where does this idea come from that in retirement, we can't do things that we used to do or that we want to do? I think we can still do all those things, be as active as we want to be, and we should be able to get out, have fun, and engage in those activities. Yeah, we ought to retire that idea also. So here's another idea that I think needs to be retired. I was talking to a friend the other day about bicycling and asked him if he ever rode, and he said, no, that ship has sailed for me. Those days are over with. I think that's another idea that we need to retire. The only way that we should decide that we can't do something is if we decided that we're going to take on some other activities, not this idea that the ship has sailed and left me behind. Come on, we need to get out and get active. You know, another thing that I think needs to be retired is this idea that at a certain age, we have to stop doing things. Our age doesn't stop us from doing things. What stops us is inactivity. So the way around it is become more active. Then we find out, wow, we have all sorts of energy to get out and do the things that we really love doing. So what's the strongest muscle in our body? Well, I think it's our mindset muscle. Because see, my mindset determines my actions. Actions determine my habits, and my habits dictate my future. It really determines what direction I'm heading in. Am I improving or am I heading towards decline? So let's look at some of the actions we can start taking to improve and create some really strong habits that starts changing the trajectory of my future. I think it's time that we retire the myth. What's the myth? That as you age, you're going to lose muscle, you're going to become weaker, and you're going to become frail over time. Now, research has shown us that that is just simply not true. That from our 70s into our 80s and even our 90s, we can regain muscle and regain strength. So the myth that I think we ought to get rid of is, first of all, that because of age, we are going to lose muscle mass and become inactive. In fact, what happens is, as we age, if we become inactive, we become sedentary, and if we develop a routine or a habit around that sedentary lifestyle, then what's going to happen is we're going to see a decline in our muscle strength, and we're going to see a decline in our overall health. So this is the myth that I think we ought to get rid of. Now, how are we going to do that? First of all, the actions we need to take is that we need more movement in our lives. And that movement leads us to momentum. And when we start picking up momentum, we are moving. And when we're moving, we're going in some type of direction. If you're sedentary, we're going nowhere. Momentum takes us off and puts us in a certain direction. Now, I get to choose that direction depending upon the type of action that I take. That's up to me, it's up to you as to which direction you want to go. So I think we have several principles to think about here to get rid of this myth. The first principle is this: we need to be bold in our decisions about what we're going to do. Second, I mentioned this before in some of the other videos, but the secret is really this. If you want to look younger and have younger movement, you're going to have muscle to make that happen. And that muscle is going to come about because of the actions and the momentum and the type of resistance training that I do. Second, if you want to remain independent in this life, and I don't know who doesn't, We need strength to be able to do that. So the secret is I need to develop strength and I need to develop muscle mass to maintain the lifestyle that I want to have. Next one, movement is everything. We need to build more movement into our lives. Even if we feel like we have an active lifestyle, I can always put more movement into that. The more I move, the better I feel, the more momentum I have and direction that I have in my life. Next, consume less. Less television, less watching YouTube videos, less watching the news. And let's take some of that time, because I'm not saying don't consume anything, but I am saying a little bit less and take some of that time and get in the habit of creating more. Now, what can I be creating? I can create a new workout routine. I can create some new type of action that I want to go out and do and try, and that's going to send me off in that direction. Movement is king as we age. Lastly, I think we need to seek out two things. We need to seek out adventures and we need to seek out discoveries. For one of the first times in our lives, we have time that we can go out and take on these adventures and these discoveries. I can't do that if I'm inactive and leading a sedentary lifestyle. So maybe one of these directions that I choose to take is I'm going to be a little bit more adventurous. I'm going to start looking for some new discoveries. Each one of us is going to define this differently. Now, there is no wrong way of doing that except to not do it. Next up, I would like you to think ahead 10 years. So 10 years from wherever you are right now age-wise, I'd like you to think out to that 10-year point and ask yourself, what would I like to be able to do in the way of activities 10 years from now? So for me, I want to continue to ride my bike. I want to continue to go on bike adventures and bike packing trips. That means if I want to be able to do that 10 years from now, I'm going to have to come up with some actions that are going to support that. And those actions mean that I need to continue to build muscle and build strength. So 10 years from now, I can do that. Nothing is worse than to get 10 years out and realize the things that I really want to do, I can no longer do because I'm too weak or too frail. That leads us to retreat. And when we retreat away from the activities that we really want to be able to do, our life starts to shrink around us, and then we really go into a moment of decline. So I want to stay away from that. The way to do it, I want to think ahead. What are those activities I want to do 10 years from now? Then what do I have to start doing today to make sure I maintain that fitness level so that I can do that and that I can remain independent in what I'm doing? Okay, here's the big three that I think we ought to really focus on if we're going to be able to do those activities. First up, we need to be aware of this right here, sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is loss of muscle mass. If I have a loss of muscle mass, that means I also have a loss of strength. That's these two right here. I don't want to lose muscle and I don't want to lose strength because it's going to affect my ability to move and what I'm capable of doing activity-wise, and it's going to affect my independence. So maintaining muscle mass is important and avoiding sarcopenia. Also, if I lose muscle mass and strength, it's going to change how I function. It's going to change my ability to get up, to move, how I rest, and everything else. So this process right here doesn't have to happen simply because we're aging. We can affect that, and this is reversible. And it's reversible by doing the hard work. That means resistance training. And that resistance training is going to counteract the sarcopenia that's naturally going on in our body because we're losing a certain percentage of muscle mass every year as we age. I just don't want to make that muscle mass loss worse than what it is. This is the first of the big three. All right, so sarcopenia. Next up is my cardiorespiratory fitness. That means how well is my heart and how well are my lungs functioning. And that means how well do I process oxygen. The better I process oxygen, the more activities I can engage in, the higher my endurance is, and in a sense, the longer and the further I can go in completing those. If this drops, my heart and lung function and their ability to process oxygen, then that means I'm going to be restricted in what I do. And if there's something I'm looking at out there 10 years from now, I want to make sure this stays in place. Third of the big three, osteopenia. This is loss of minerals in my bone. When that happens and I lose bone mineral, I'm losing bone density. And when I lose bone density, that means my body isn't able to support more muscle. There's only a certain amount of muscle that I can support depending upon my bone density. So I want stronger bones, a better cardiorespiratory system, and I want to reduce sarcopenia. That's the big three. So if there's something to focus on here and something to be concerned with as we age, it's these three right here, and that they don't creep into my life. All right, so how do we know how we're doing on these three? First, I want to know what amount of muscle mass I have in my body. Because if I don't have a starting point and knowing what that is, I don't have any idea if I'm improving or going backwards. Second, I need to find out what my VO2 max is. VO2 max is going to tell me my body's ability to process oxygen. And then for osteopenia and bone density, there's what's called the T-score. So I need to find those three out so that I have a baseline to look at. Because 10 years from now, I want to be able to continue to do this. So how do I know what those are? Well, the first thing I'd recommend is this. Go out and get a DEXA scan. Now I get 4 DEXA scans a year, once every 3 months, and I've started off a year ago, and that gave me my baseline. Now every time I've gone back, I can compare the next score to my baseline, and that tells me, am I gaining ground on this or am I losing ground on that? A DEXA scan, best thing we can do. Second, for VO2 max, you can go out and get a VO2 max score. And I do mine through the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I go in twice a year and do my VO2 max because, again, I have a baseline for this and I want to make sure that this is improving, not going backwards. And then for the last one, for my T-score, I need to go get a bone density score. Now, you can get this bone density score along with your DEXA scan score. So most of the companies out there, when you do one, you can do the other, and you can sign up for it. This will, again, give me my baseline on my T-score. That gives me the ability to start tracking how well am I doing against these three. If you do that, that is almost going to assure me that 10 years from now, I'm still going to be able to do those activities that I want to be able to do. Because I don't want to get out there 10 years and have any type of regret and retreat and feel like the world is shrinking in around me because I can no longer do the things that I want to do. Okay, so let's continue talking about muscles and strength. Let's say I'm going to build a home, and the home that I want to build is going to be 4,000 square feet. Before I can build that house, we have to put a foundation in the ground. That foundation has to be able to support at least a 4,000 square foot home. If I put a weak foundation in the ground, we all know what's going to happen to the house, and we're going to watch it as it falls into decay and collapses in on itself. So to have a strong home, I need a strong foundation for it to set upon. Well, in our analogy, when we think about ourselves, the home is like our muscles, and the foundation is like our bones. The stronger my bones, the more muscle it can support. I can't support a lot of muscle with weak bones. So if I have weak bones and stronger muscles, what happens is our body goes into imbalance. And our bodies do not like being in imbalance. That means I'm dramatically increasing the chance that something is going to break, and then I'm going to have to heal from that. So to have a strong house, I have to have a strong foundation. If I want more muscle, I have to have stronger bones to support it. There's a limit as to how much muscle I can support depending upon my bone density. So here's what happens overall. If I build my muscle and build my bone density, so I have good strong bones to support that, that means I can do more of the activities that I want to be able to do, and I can do them longer. So remember, looking out 10 years, what are those things I want to be able to do 10 years from now? They're right here. To make that happen, I have to have muscle and bone strength working together to allow me to do that. Now, not only can I do more activities, I can do more activities better. That means I have the endurance to be able to continue to do what I do, and I won't run out of energy or feel exhausted and not feel like I want to go on. Remember, if I get out 10 years from now and there's activities that I'd really like to be able to do, but I'm incapable of doing it because I don't have the muscle and the bone density to support that, then we start to retreat in life. Life starts to shrink in around us and regret comes about because we really would like to be able to do some of these activities. Now I just find out it's too late. Okay, so if you're starting your journey to have more muscle and stronger bones to increase your strength, I think there's 3 tests that would give you a really great idea of your overall condition. Those are a DEXA scan, a VO2 max test, and a bone density test or a bone mineral density test. All right, so you want to get stronger, have more muscle, and have more strength. 3 tests I think are critical for you to have to establish your baseline. Now, if I don't know what my baseline is, I have no idea if I'm improving and doing enough exercise or going backwards and not doing enough exercise. Having a baseline then gives me something to compare my results to. Those 3 tests are, first of all, a DEXA scan. This is going to tell you your overall muscle density on your body, and it will tell you your visceral fat and your subcutaneous fat. That way you can tell, are you improving in those areas by reducing the amount of fat in your body, by increasing the amount of muscle mass. Next is your VO2 max test. Your VO2 max test will tell you how well, for your age, do you process oxygen in your body. This is critical for being able to do any type of endurance events. And then lastly is your bone density test. Now, if you have those 3 tests in mind and you know where your baseline is, now you can start your process of improving your muscle strength, your ability to process oxygen in your body, and by the way, when you're doing strength training, your bone density is going to improve. Once I have my baseline, then I can look back on that and see all of the progress I'm doing. Because remember, 10 years from now, we have certain activities that we want to be able to go out and do. And what's going to allow me to get there is my muscle and my overall strength. So what I did was I started 14 months ago and I went in for my first DEXA scan in my bone density. 2 weeks later, I went in for my first VO2 max test. Now for me, I go in 4 times a year for a DEXA scan. I go in twice a year for a VO2 max test, and I go in 4 times a year for a bone density, because I'm doing the bone density and the DEXA scan at the same time, at the same location. VO2 max improves slowly, so it takes a lot of effort and it takes time to cause your VO2 max to go up. So if you're wondering, why am I not doing this 4 times a year? It's because your body needs time to adapt to the stress that we're putting on it. Once I start adapting and I know where my baseline is, now I can start tracking my progress. And I think this will give you a great snapshot into where am I going, what direction am I going to, and most importantly, am I going to be able to do those activities 10 years from now? I certainly hope so, and this will start me on my journey. Now you might be thinking, I wonder where in the world I can find a DEXA scan, a VO2 max, and a bone density test. All you have to do is run a Google search for the town that you're living in, and you will find services that will provide these 3 tests. Then schedule your appointments, get in there and get your test done. You got your baseline, you're ready to go.